As we've been telling you, we have had a horrific mass shooting down in Kendall this morning, but in the city of Miami this week, also a lot of gun violence, including gunfire and deaths in Wynwood and Midtown.
For sure, no slow start for Miami's new police chief, who's made headlines for his criticism nationally of inadequate consequences for lawbreakers and unsatisfactory court outcomes. And Chief Art Acevedo is with us live from the car, Chief?
The car, the Tahoe. We're working and we're trying to keep this community safe.
You know, Chief, we do value your time and really appreciate your time with us here. And I wanted to start with something. I'm not sure if you heard County Commissioner Keone McGee talk about you've experienced in your city shootings this week there and a lot of different days as well. Not only the ones that make the news, crime and bullets increasingly have no boundaries. And I wonder if you would expand on that a little bit, because especially nationally, anything that happens in South Florida is Miami to people who aren't here. I mean, in this image-conscious city, you must be having a time of it this week.
Well, look, forget the image. What we care about is people. We care about lives. We care about families. We care about dreams that are shattered. And I did listen to the commissioner. Really appreciated his comments and the entire, as a city resident, or soon-to-be city resident. I'm actually moving in, hopefully in about 2 weeks to my new home, our family. It really is heartening to see our leaders come together. So we don't turn into a Chicago. We don't turn into a city that makes the national headlines. And so that should be heartening for everybody. But what you started with was the fact that in this country, we have been coddling violent criminals now for a couple of years. And we're starting to see that those seeds of weakness are starting to pay fruit in terms of the violence going on across the country. And it's time for us to rethink how we treat people that are committing violence, including our jury system. You know, our jurors need not, I've been told by a lot of people that our jurors tend to, be forgiving, tend to give people a pass. And, you cannot give pass to people that are out hurting people. And
Chief, can you just coddling criminals? That's an interesting phrase. I think anyone who watches the justice system here knows exactly what you're talking about. And there are repeat criminals who avoid prosecution. And I wonder, for those who are not so familiar with how prosecutions go, what does that mean? Explain that.
Well, what it means, and I can tell you from the national perspective, this is the conversation we're having. I just talked to the Department of Justice, the #2 person of the Department of Justice at the national level last week. We have a movement right now in our country with a lot of prosecutors and judges that a lot of them are fairly new, that don't understand that you've got to put bad people in prison. And I can tell you that around the country, police officers are chasing, apprehending, arresting, and bringing reports forward on people that are shooting people, and they're going in one door, not the other. Not to mention the fact that our court system across the country, too many of our juries, too many of our judges across the country, and too many of our prosecutors, when we catch felons with firearms, nothing happens. They don't. These bad actors are not afraid of death. Their mindset is that they're not going to live long. They're probably going to die young, so they're not afraid of death. The only thing they fear is prison. And so I'm glad that our federal partners are going to be taking on more cases, and I'm hopeful after meeting with our judges and our prosecutors here that we're going to be the exception to that latest wave of coddling criminals in this county, and hopefully that will encourage them to go commit their crimes and their violence somewhere else.
Yeah. Chief Acevedo, you have been a law enforcement officer in California, Houston. We're glad you're in Miami. As you know from your experience, prosecutors, both here in Miami-Dade, Broward County, Monroe, they take serious cases, but they only want to go to trial on cases where they are assured of a conviction. And the great majority of cases, the criminals, or the alleged criminals, are allowed to plead down to a lesser charge, and often they do avoid a stiff prison sentence. So what is your advice to prosecutors? Should they try more people? Should they not do these plea deals?
Look, my I've been 35 years doing this job, and I can tell you that my suggestion to prosecutors across the country is that if we can tie someone to 18 counts of robbery, let's charge them with 18 counts of robbery, because what's happening, or assault, or aggravated assault, or attempted murder, a lot of places around this country right now, we can tie someone to 18 violent crimes, and they'll be charged with one. And so then the judges will give them a slap on the wrist. And so, hey, we got to call balls and strikes. We've got to bring, I think, transparency. Law enforcement puts up all their data. We need the criminal justice system across the nation to actually start being a lot more transparent so people can see what's happening in our courtrooms and with prosecutors and with everyone. We all need to put all of our cards on the table so the public can make an assessment of how the system is working nationwide.
I think in the future we might have that conversation and bring in prosecutors, because I know that they probably would have a say with what you're telling us now, but I want to just get a little more detailed, if we can, in the short time we have together. Soon after taking the position, you announced this 90-day saturation, and we're talking about the city of Miami, which is a relatively small part of the county, and yet you had 5 areas where you had said 80% of the shootings occur: Little Havana, Little Haiti, Overtown. There's the map, Alapata, Model City. You can see the map, you can see the concentration. 3 weeks in, this saturation of officers, this daily briefings. Give us an update. We're about, what, a quarter of the way into this 90-day plan. Have you seen the needle move?
Well, I can look. Last time I checked, I think last year we had 9 homicides in the month of May in the city of Miami. This year, I think we had 3. So the needle is moving. And last night I actually worked patrol at about 5 a.m. in a marked unit. On my way out, I ran into some of our jail personnel. They said, "Chief, this initiative sure seems like there's a lot of arrests coming through." So I think it is having an impact. But again, it's a matter of all of us coming together. Not to mention, I went to a scene, encountered a drunk driving crash, and the witness was really, really hesitant to come forward. It took me a little coaxing, probably about 20 minutes while we were there. But finally, this man did the right thing and stood up for his community. And so the other piece that's really important is the community itself. People have to stand up for their neighbors, for their friends, for their family, and for a stranger. And when we do that, we're going to end up with a safer community. So it's time for all of us to do our share. It's going to take everyone rowing in the same direction. But I'm confident that we're going to be able to stem the flow. And I promise you, we're going to be making arrests in the city of Miami for some of these shootings we've had recently in the upcoming days and weeks, and we're going to bring justice to the families of our victims.
Chief, I heard you earlier this week at a news conference make I thought, an interesting insight into police work. You said formerly there used to be turf wars. Now we sort of have these drive-by wars. We have had, in Miami-Dade County over the last 2 weeks or so, at least 3 or 4 instances where people in cars drive by a gathering of some kind, and just open fire. The one there in Northwest Miami-Dade, the Al Mula, they were out of their car for 10 seconds. That's all it took. So the question becomes, how do you stop people intent on this kind of violence?
Well, look, it takes a well-balanced and a comprehensive approach. It includes the investing in the communities, investing in pre-K education, investing in jobs training, investing in quality public education. But that's a long-term strategy. In the short term, we've got to have more cops on the streets. We've got to take these crooks off the streets. And once we make the arrest and we provide the probable cause and make the case, then we need to have the courts and the prosecutors and everyone else, and ultimately the jurors have to hold people accountable. There have to be consequences. These bad actors, if they think that it's going to be tougher on them in Broward County than it is in Dade County or some other county, guess what they're going to do? They're going to do a risk versus gain analysis. They're going to come and do their things down here. And so it starts with a lot of things, but it ends with all of us coming together to hold people accountable and stand for one another. And I'm confident, as I've only been here for like six and a half weeks, that we're going to stem the flow. There's no doubt in my mind, because again, I got to meet with our judges. They seem to be on board. They seem to be ready to rock and roll. I think the prosecutors ready to rock and roll, but ultimately jurors need to rock and roll as well.
Chief Art Acevedo, always appreciate your time. Thank you.
Chief,
and
thank you.
We now have the attention, so let's see.